clear skies overnight for many of us once that rain does clear the far southeast. Temperatures will dip down a little lower than they have done lately, so a slightly fresher start to the day, but there's going to be more sunshine around for most of us to start the day on Thursday. But also those strong winds. We could see gale force winds up to the west of Scotland, and also some very persistent, heavy, potentially thundery showers moving in across the Western Isles, the Highlands, down into southwestern areas of Scotland as well. Also risk of showers for Northern Ireland. Clearer and drier for much of the rest of the UK, for much of Wales, central areas of England, northeastern England as well, and much of southern areas as well. But there will be a bit of a breeze around through Thursday, and I think as we head into the afternoon, that wind will strengthen elsewhere away from the far northwest, where there will be quite frequent showers through much of the day. But actually, for most of us, it's going to be a sunnier and drier day as we head into Thursday. The best of the sunshine will be across southeastern areas. Temperatures climbing a little higher than today in the sheltered sunshine, 21 degrees at best, but very fresh feel further north and west in the low teens for some of us. Then through Thursday evening, we start to see this spell of wet weather spread in from the south and west, and that's going to become a much bigger feature as we head into Friday. So more widely a wetter day on Friday, and then we're into sunshine and showers as we head into the weekend before it warms up a little into the start of next week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Long delays in the West Midlands heading south down the M6. Two lanes are out of action at Junction 10, the Wolverhampton and Walsall exit, where a lorry's broken down with tailbacks back onto the M54. The A14 in Northamptonshire is blocked westbound, Junction 5 to 4 towards Rothwell at the scene of an accident. And in Suffolk, southwest of Mildenhall, the A11 is shut northbound from Red Lodge to Barton Mills. That's at the scene of an accident, causing queues back towards the A14. And in North London, Wood Street at High Barnet, blocked by collision. In South London at New Addington, Gravel Hill, the A212, closed following a serious accident near to Kent Gateway. And on the Kent stretch of the M25, there are anti-clockwise queues heading out of Kent through the Dartford tunnels towards Essex after an earlier accident. And Elizabeth Line trains are suspended west of Hayes and Harlington to Heathrow. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's our summer treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest cash prize of the year so far. With an extra £30,000 in your bank account this year, you could take the ultimate financial holiday and send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could get you those nagging home improvements done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For a chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock and I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. We did it, everybody. Yes, we've made it pretty much now to the end. Only one more sleep to go till the general election. The final polls are in. So let's take a look at them, shall we? Also, let's look as well at the intervention from Boris Johnson. What do you make to that? Will it make a difference or not? And speaking of the polls and whether or not they're to be believed, and if they are, we're going to end up likely with a Labour majority. What does that mean then for women's rights in this country? Also, Andy Burnham, he has been speaking out about the situation with Le Pen in France, warning us here, and I quote, that we must reject the hateful politics of the British right. Your thoughts on... all of that and more, and I've got a great panel for you tonight. But first, the 6 o'clock news headlines.
Michelle, thank you very much, and good evening to you. It's just after 6 o'clock, and we'll start with a roundup of today's election news. And on the final day of campaigning, party leaders have been crossing the country, making a final push for votes. Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey has been tractor racing and says there's no ceiling to what his party can achieve. Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak insists he's still fighting hard, despite his Work and Pensions Secretary Mel Stride suggesting the Tories are heading for defeat. But Sir Keir Starmer has warned that talk of a Labour landslide is intended to encourage voters to stay at home.
We are fighting for every vote, and across the country there will be constituencies which will go down to the wire. And therefore we will continue to fight until 10 o'clock tomorrow night, making the case that change only happens if you vote for it. But it is a huge opportunity for our country. This is the opportunity to turn the page and to move forward. And I want people to go out and vote for change and be part of the change that I think will bring about such a different and better future for our country.
Sir Keir Starmer there speaking earlier this afternoon. Well, with just hours until polls open in the morning, a new projection has put Labour on course for a landslide general election win. The final YouGov campaign poll puts them on 431 seats. It would mean a majority of 212 in the House of Commons, with the Conservatives dropping down to 102 MPs. YouGov's also putting the Liberal Democrats on 74 seats, the SNP fall from 48 to 20, Reform on 3, and the Greens would secure 2 seats. In the US, the White House has denied a report in the New York Times today that President Biden has told a key ally he is now weighing up whether to continue in the presidential race. Yesterday, Congressman Lloyd Doggett became the first Democrat to call on the 81-year-old to withdraw. Earlier, Joe Biden admitted he nearly fell asleep during last week's TV debate with Donald Trump. Here, the daughter of Captain Sir Tom Moore has been disqualified from being the trustee of a charity. The Charity Commission blocked Hannah Ingram Moore and her husband Colin from taking on charitable roles after looking into the Captain Tom Moore Foundation shortly after his death in 2021. It came amid concerns that its management and independence from Captain Tom Moore's family was inadequate. Australian police are resuming their search for a 12-year-old child who was reportedly attacked by a crocodile while swimming. The alert was raised last night in Palumpa, a remote town near Darwin in the Northern Territory. Police said the child was last seen swimming in Mango Creek with a group of others before they noticed the child had vanished. The area is home to around 100,000 saltwater crocodiles. That's more than anywhere else in the world, though attacks there on people are rare. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis, and I'll be back with your next roundup at 7 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that. I am Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co, and I'm with you until 7 o'clock tonight. One more sleep to go, everyone, until the general election. So I've established a corker of a panel for you guys tonight. So I've got the Professor of Politics at the University of Kent, Matthew Goodwin, and the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. I don't know why it says Matthew. We like to call you Matt.
Matt works for me.
I'm not your mother.
You're not. You're not. You're definitely not my mother.
No, I'm not. That's way too young. Look, everybody, how do you feel today? Are you glad that it's almost finally reaching the end? Do you know what you're doing come tomorrow? Are you excited about getting out there and putting your cross in the box? Or, quite frankly, could you not care any less if you tried? Lots I want to talk about with you tonight, and you know the drill. It's not just about us three, it's very much about you guys at home as well. So get in touch all the usual ways. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. Go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay, or you can tweet or X me. But look, it was indeed the final day of campaigning today. It's not over yet, though, so let's cross live to our political editor, Christopher Herp, to bring us up to speed with what we've missed today. Christopher.
Hi, Michelle. Yeah, welcome to the final day but one. Election Eve, if you like. It all happens tomorrow. We'll go quiet for a day, and then we're back on your screens from around 10 p.m. tomorrow night, just before that, with the results, and that'll be quite an epic day, I think. Yeah, today we've seen a final poll from YouGov, an MRP poll, giving Labour a 212-seat majority. That is huge and historic, the biggest since 1832, when the Great Reform Act was signed, Michelle, as you well know from your history books. The polls look as though it's going to be a Labour landslide. We'll wait and see if that happens. I'm old enough to remember the 2017 election when the landslide for Theresa May didn't happen at all, so things can go wrong with the polling. Don't forget that. That's a huge caveat, and the only poll that matters is tomorrow, of course. Elsewhere, Ed Davey and Daisy Cooper, they've been spotted in a pink Cadillac, drive off into the sunset to ABBA, Take a Chance on Me. They're trying to say take a chance on the Lib Dems, and that was his final stunt of a stunt-heavy election campaign by the Lib Dem leader. So Keir Starmer has had a boost. The Sun, a newspaper which is backed the winner in every election since 1979, has said the Sun backs Starmer. That is surprising for some. There's a bit of corporate angst between the Labour Party and particularly the Sir Keir Starmer and the Sun over the phone hacking affair. Of course, he was DPP, Sir Keir Starmer, during those prosecutions of journalists at the Sun, but they put that behind themselves to say the Sun backs Starmer in tomorrow's paper. He, of course, is delighted that's happened. Also, I've interviewed Nigel Farage. He's the Reform UK leader tonight. It airs on our channel at 7 p.m, straight after your show, Michelle. And in there, he has said he's made quite a bold prediction about how many votes he thinks his party will win. He says, and Matthew Goodwin might want to listen to this, 6 million votes tomorrow for Reform UK, he claims. That's 1 in 5 Brits will vote Reform UK. And looking at that polling, if they win just 3 MPs, then you can bet your bottom dollar that Nigel Farage will be campaigning very quickly for electoral reform. It will compare at those kind of level, I think, to the 3.9 million people who voted for UKIP back in 2015 and left them with a single MP. And of course, Rishi Sunak, he's also been campaigning and using the support of Boris Johnson at the rally last night. So all to play for the final night of campaigning by all these 4 leaders ahead of polling day tomorrow. A slight pause, and then the drama will really start.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you very much for that, Christopher. I confess, ladies and gents, if you're a regular viewer of this programme, you will have heard me say in the past that I've never really been all that bothered about general elections. I've never really been one to vote. I mean, don't tell me off. I know, I don't. But this time, ladies and gents, this time I can tell you right now, I am definitely going out tomorrow. I cannot wait. I hope many of you also perhaps have got some kind of energy for this general election, even if you didn't have it previously. Look, we've just been talking there about the polls. Obviously, he's just been mentioning one that you did for us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first thing to say, I mean, this is like Christmas for me. I'm so excited about this election, I tell you. Maybe not as excited as others about the likely outcome, but I'm excited about
this. This is on the screen, by the way. This
is so look, if you look at the latest polling, what we've got Labour actually slightly down, consistent with the other national polls. We've got Labour being squeezed in the final days of the campaign. Reform 20% in second, Conservatives third, 16%. Just to say, Michelle, if you look at the final polls, they're actually pretty good for Reform. Opinion today have them on a record high. of 17%. Lord Ashcroft has them 18%. The YouGov MRP poll suggests they're on course to win some seats. You just heard Chris Hope saying Nigel Farage thinks they will probably get in the region of 6 million votes. That's actually my guesstimate as well. I think as long as Farage gets elected and they win, you know, somewhere in the region of 6 million, 5, 6, 7 million votes, they get a bunch of second places, that's enough, basically. But all the final polls are all basically saying the same thing. Big Labour government, biggest majority that we've had certainly since the beginning of the 20th century, and the worst Conservative result on record. Let's see. We're either going to get that or the biggest error in the history of the polling industry, in which case me and many other pollsters should pack up shop with our tails between our legs.
I'll shake your hand then before you leave tonight, just in case I never see you again, because you might have got it all wrong.
Yeah,
That's to kick you off.
I will leave social media instantly if that happens.
Aaron Bastani, what do you make to these polls?
Yeah, the 6 million is interesting because, of course, Nigel Farage doesn't want to commit to seats. That's far harder to guess. You've got to remember, in 2015, UKIP and the Greens between them got the best part of 5 million votes. They've got 2 MPs. So 6 million can actually leave you with very few people in Parliament. Looking at Matthew's polling just a moment ago, the Greens on 9%, Reform, what was it, on 20%?
Yeah.
That is 29% of the vote. And I'm not just saying this because they're the radical wings of politics. That is almost 1 in 3 voters going for those two parties, and they may get 4, 5 MPs, which would be utterly extraordinary. And I think you're right. If Farage wins, you'll immediately see a campaign, really, for electoral reform. But that's a big if. He would have done that, by the way, after 2015. The point was he didn't win a seat. So I think there are huge opportunities for disruption in British politics. There have been for a very long time. The point is, time after time after time, people like Farage, people like the Greens, can't actually get over that final hurdle and get into Parliament. This time looks like it will be different, but we don't know.
Well, people have got to turn out and vote. That is the thing. People have to, because I know there's a lot of politically disengaged people who I would definitely have put myself in the same bracket as you guys. So I'm certainly not knocking that. Trust me, I completely understand it. But there's an exciting opportunity to perhaps disrupt things, I think, in this election.
Can I just come in? Here's one thing to watch, and I agree with Aaron. I think we're both sort of on the outside, I guess, the Overton window, you might say, on some of these issues. Here's one thing to watch. The combined share of the vote for Labour and the Conservatives. I suspect that is going to finish somewhere around 55 to 60%. If that happens, that's going to be the lowest combined vote for the big two parties since the modern two-party system began. And that's a good sign, alongside things like Reform, the Greens, you know, support for smaller parties, that we've got a very restless, frustrated, angry electorate out there. Keep your eyes, too, on turnout. I suspect turnout might be low, perhaps as low as what we saw in 2001, 2005, somewhere around the 55, 60% range. Keep your eyes on that. And, of course, keep your eyes on how big that Reform vote's going to be. If it is 6, 7 million votes for one seat, I mean, that in itself is something of a political crisis, and I suspect that will drive these demands for some kind of electoral reform.
Well, of course, as well, we've now seen many people have been saying, where's Boris Johnson in all of this? Well, he answered that question by taking to the stage last night. Did you see any of it? Let's look.
Last 14 years have been about chaos and division, and last night they wheeled out the architect.
Well, unless he's had a radical haircut, that certainly was not Boris Johnson. Look, anyway, he took to the stage, and it was apparently, I was not there, I must confess, but I do, from what all accounts, it was like some form of rock concert. There you go. Have we got any audio on this clip or not? Let me see. No, OK, there's no audio on that. But there you go, he's still got his mop of hair, still got his energy and his enthusiasm, it would appear, for the Tory party. He was saying quite a lot of things that were very negative about the likes of Nigel Farage. There was a lot of talk about parrots and diseases and Putin. Lots of it I found very bizarre, I won't lie. But what did you make to it?
I think the power of Boris Johnson is massively exaggerated in British politics. He's now one of the most unpopular politicians in frontline politics. The star quality has definitely come off Boris Johnson. For Conservatives, don't forget, there's a lot of anger out there, particularly those Conservatives that have defected to Reform. He was the guy who liberalised immigration. He was the guy who put mass migration on steroids. He was the guy who lost control of the borders. He was the guy who removed the requirement for British companies to advertise jobs here before advertising them overseas. He's the guy that presided over the graduate visa programme. And I think a lot of Conservatives, you know, remember, Michelle, this isn't 2019. I think a lot of Conservatives now look at Boris and they just see a guy that betrayed them, sold the country down the river. And, yeah, great reception in that particular area, but I just don't think he is the political rock star he used to be.
I know that a lot of you guys at home, I know that you lent Boris Johnson your vote for the first time in 2019, so I wonder, what do you guys think to him? Get in touch and tell me if you are someone who did that for the first time, you went Tory for the first time because of Boris. What do you think to him? I can show you a clip of Boris speaking last night now.
These polls are right, then at the very moment when this country has beaten COVID and beaten post-COVID inflation, at the very moment when we should be encouraging enterprise and growth and putting some money into home ownership and putting some money into people's pockets, Westminster is about to go in diametrically the opposite direction. And so none of us can sit back as a Labour government prepares to use a sledgehammer majority to destroy so much of what we have achieved, what you have achieved.
Well, if he was that bothered, why don't you come out earlier and say all of this stuff earlier? Why leave it until the last moment? Many people are saying that it won for England and Jude Bellingham, so maybe it could win for the Tories, that last second intervention. Aaron, what do you make to it all?
Yeah, big difference as Jude Bellingham's a team player. If Boris Johnson...
Ooh, ouchie.
If he really cared about how the Conservatives are going to do, he wouldn't have been on a beach until a few days ago. This is about him saving face and in the future being able to say, look, I helped the Conservatives, I was on the pitch, I didn't shy away from my duty. Of course, he has done exactly that. This is purely performative. There was one phrase that really caught my attention. If you've got a few thousand to spare, then go ahead, vote Keir Starmer. And I'm thinking the Conservative Party, for my entire life, has pitched itself as the party for people that want to get ahead, be successful, own a small business. Now, things have been tougher for all of us in the last couple of years, but there are still many people doing pretty well, keeping their head above water, growing, prospering, the backbone of small business across this country. And he's literally saying to them, if you have a few thousand to spare, vote Keir Starmer. I cannot get my head around this man, and I think just...
Why? I mean, surely you understand what he's talking about there.
No, I don't. Well, you're basically saying if you're moderately successful, vote for Labour.
No, he's been sarcastic. So obviously what he's saying is because Rishi Sunak has not been able to land a proper punch on Keir Starmer. He keeps chanting about this £2,000 tax thing, which keeps getting, battered away as being unproven. But not everyone, many people worry that actually what's going to happen is Keir Starmer's going to come in. Yes, he says it's not going to raise tax for the working people, but as then we discovered what he means by working people is people that work but haven't got any savings. So anyone that has got savings, the sentiment will be that he is going to come and he's going to clobber that money.
I would say, look, whenever you're in politics and you say to your audience, go ahead, vote for the other guy, it's really stupid.
If you want to be worse off, that's what he means.
Can I just say one thing?
It's a phrase you should never utter.
This was in the papers today. I think this really gets to the heart of the Tory problem here. If you want uncontrolled immigration, mandatory wokery, and kowtowing to Brussels, then go right ahead and vote for Starmer. Now, lots of Conservative voters out there, many of whom won't vote or will vote for Farage and Reform, they're going to say, well, hang on, it was the Conservatives that presided over large-scale immigration, sending net migration to 700,000. It was the Conservatives that mainstreamed gender ideology, critical race theory in our schools and universities. It was the Conservatives who refused to leave the European Convention on Human Rights so we can control our own borders. And I think this is the basic dilemma facing the party. Now, my prediction, you heard it here first, shock prediction, Rishi Sunak will probably end up resigning on Friday morning. And I suspect he might stay as caretaker, but we will then go very quickly into a Conservative Party leadership contest. This is the dividing line in that contest, because the Conservatives are going to have to decide, are they a party for establishment Tory Liberals, or are they a party for national Conservatives who understand what the Brexit realignment was all about? And that contest is going to start Friday morning.
It certainly will, and I'll tell you, I might be a bit tired then, because one of the things that I am very, very excited about, don't forget, on election night, we are going to be hosting not just all of the kind of stuff from the studio where we'll be getting involved in every single result, all of the twists and turns and the analysis. Of course, we're going to tick that box, but we're GB News, so we like to do things completely differently. So I and Patrick Christie's, we're hosting a party for you. We will be in Essex. I did a recce of the venue yesterday. It's going to be absolutely amazing. We've got some great things up our sleeves. I'm going to get my party dress on. There's a bar. We're going to have a great time, and I hope that you choose to join us for that evening. Coming up after the break, though, I'll look at tomorrow's front page of The Sun. Can you guess who they've endorsed? And I also want to ask, if indeed Labour do get this massive majority, what do you think it means then for women's rights? That and a lot more coming up. I'll see you in 2.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Question is...
should our museums stay free for everyone and anyone, or should we be charging our tourists?
So many of the artefacts are from around the world, stolen actually. I think it's almost to add insult to injury to ask people to pay to see the artefacts that were taken without their permission. One of the things that the museum set itself up for is a kind of World Heritage where you can see the stuff they took from your country free of charge, because the British state's willing to do that. Is one of the reasons why we hold on to many of the artefacts from around the world instead of giving them back.
I mean, that's a noble argument, Wayman, but none of the other countries in the world that also contain artefacts from all over the world indulge in that, do they? We still have to pay to see anything that's come from the UK that might be overseas?
No, but the absolute truth is that we've stolen a lot more over many more years than anybody else, because we're a very, very, we had a very, very big empire, and during that time, taking things from other countries without their permission.
And I think our wonderful country, the United Kingdom, is the cradle of modern civilization, not of the ancient world, but of the modern world. You know, for centuries, we've contributed things to the world, which has spread out around the world, and the influence that we've put upon countries around the globe has been massively significant. I think it's a privilege for people to be able to come to this country and track the history of our country through our museums. I can't understand why they've ever been free. The upkeep of museums runs into hundreds of millions of pounds a year. Somebody's got to maintain them and keep them good. Somebody's got to go around the world and collect the artefacts which are in our museums. And I've always had the adage in life, if something is free, it's probably not worth having.
The People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, the Professor of Politics at the University of Kent, Matt Goodwin, and the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Lots of you guys getting in touch. I'll bring some of you into the conversation in a few minutes. But for now, let me show you the front page of tomorrow's Sun newspaper. Look at that, everybody. The Sun have come out and declared their support, essentially, for the Labour Party. They're saying it's time for a new manager, and they don't mean that you need to sack Southgate. Although a lot of people would probably agree with that latter sentiment, but I won't get into that. That's quite interesting. I mean, this endorsement from the Sun, I don't imagine for a second it holds the kind of might that it once did. But still, it's quite significant, no?
Well, the Sun, you know, used to say it was the Sun what won it.
Yeah.
And I think it is significant. I think in some respects that front page sums up the mood in the country. You know, I don't think there is mass public enthusiasm for Keir Starmer and the Labour Party on any of the data that we see in the polling. Starmer's not particularly popular. People are not won over by Labour's case, but there is an enormous appetite for change. Just get somebody else in there. If you look at some of the... You know, there's a question, Michelle. that pollsters often say carries more power than anything related to policy and leader. And it's what we'd call today a vibes-based question. And it's simply this. Is it time for a change? Is it time for a change in Westminster? And if you ask voters that question today...
I was going to say no.
75%, 80% say, yeah, it's time for a change. And I think that's where you see the newspapers falling into line and saying, actually, if they want to stay on the, the right side of that, the zeitgeist in the country, then an implicit nod to Labour, even if they're not won over by Labour's economics, by Labour's immigration plans. I know for a fact I'm not won over by that, but that's why I suspect they've done that.
What do you think of that endorsement, Aaron?
It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for Rupert Murdoch. It's embarrassing for the Sun newspaper. This, really, to me, is so emblematic of how irrelevant the Sun has become. They're following in the slipstream of the Financial Times and the Economist, which, of course, for Labour is what really matters, because you don't want to enter number 10 and then have a run on the pound, have the markets come after you. That's what would have mattered to Labour. This is very much not even second place. It's nowhere near. The Sun is doing this because their readers are going to vote for Labour. They're catching up with their readers rather than, and I think that's right, what you sort of alluded to there. They're catching up with their readers rather than guiding them in a particular direction.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I looked at a tweet from Kelvin Mackenzie, who comes on the show occasionally. He is, of course, a former editor of the Sun newspaper. He thinks that actually many readers of the Sun actually are going to be going reform. And that
I'm sure many will.
And that there's a sentiment, actually, a consideration of should we or shouldn't we come out and back reform, but perhaps that there was commercial decisions then taken, that if they did do that, then the advertisers would distance themselves from the Sun newspaper, potentially.
Well, reform's obviously been on the rise in the last month, but prior to that, Labour have really been leading amongst Sun readers for quite a while. And what I would say is that's absolutely true. Reform will certainly be a very strong second, if not, up there with Labour. But if you look at the things that they have criticised with regards to Rishi Sunak, the Tories allowed a civil service blob. Labour are very much a party that believe in the civil service. Activist quangos. Keir Starmer's going to create more quangos. Human rights lawyers. Keir Starmer is a former human rights lawyer. So it seems to me that they felt they had no choice. They want to remain relevant. And I think you're right. They would have backed reform. But the point is, Farage, best case scenario, gets half a dozen seats. They will look less relevant than they want to be. They have always been the bull in the china shop. That's simply no longer true, right? In an age of social media, you guys are here. People get their news from many, many places, not just print daily newspapers. I think it really is a testament to how irrelevant the Sun has been. They're still a player. They still shape public opinion, but nothing like the early 1990s.
If I just briefly come in, I mean, and I put cards on the table, I do write for the Sun, so it's, But having said that, there's a key demographic that matters here, and that's what we call the C2 skilled working class, white van man. Who still looks to the Sun for sport, bit of politics, bit of fun, bit of entertainment. That demographic has swung behind Labour too, and that's the Brexit demographic, the workington man, the patriotic, but also economically really hacked off with the system. And I think that's the demographic that really matters there. That's what they're really trying to get behind.
I was just asking you about how you feel about Boris. Popping back up, Sarah says, Boris cheered up my family. She says it was great to see Boris back last night. Adrian says, Boris's personality, second to none. Neither of the main party leaders have any personality. But Martin says Boris Johnson is yesterday's man and a total irrelevance, he says. Kim just simply says, Boris, give it up, old chap. There you go. Mal says, sorry, Boris, it's way too late to be popping up and showing your face now. He says Nigel is the only one who can make Britain great again. Let me come back to Keir Starmer, because as a woman, one of my primary concerns in this election is the future of the kind of what many people will describe as the trans issue and all the rest of it. For me, I feel very passionately that as a biological female, there are certain spaces that I want to go into and not have biological men be in those spaces, whether it's dressing rooms or whatever. I don't want my little boy, when he goes to school, to be told that if he's miserable, maybe it's because he's a girl, all those kind of things. I'm very passionate about those topics. They mean a lot to me. And I worry that if we have a Labour majority, I worry how much of those women's rights, for example, are going to be protected under him. What do you think?
I think that's a legitimate worry in terms of what's going to happen under a Labour government with a big majority. We already know based on the things Labour have said, that they're going to continue to mainstream what we'd call gender ideology in the schools, the universities, and also other public institutions like the civil service. They've already said they're going to make it easier to transition your gender, for a boy to become a girl and a girl to become a boy. They're going to make it easier. They're going to remove the roadblocks. Yes, they say they've dropped the idea of gender self-identification, but actually they've just made clear they're going to remove a number of roadblocks related to that. And we also know that they are going to I think, be quite easy at letting these radical activist lobbying groups and campaign groups into schools, which we've seen over the last few years, mainstreaming these wacky ideas, which, as the Cass review showed with regards to the National Health Service and looking at how these ideas have become deeply embedded in the NHS, they have no serious basis in science. They are this is a contested political belief system that we're exposing to kids. This is where I think Labour are weak, by the way. This is where I think Labour are very weak, because whenever I poll these ideas, you know, we should rename pregnant mothers pregnant persons, as an example. That's supported by 5% of the country. The SNP imploded partly because it massively overreached on these gender issues. Labour with a massive majority, with somebody like Harriet Harman overseeing an equalities agenda, somebody like Jess Phillips, who knows who's going to end up running this stuff. I'm very concerned, and I think lots of mums and dads out there feel the same way.
Well, I mean, we've got a situation now, we've got multiple nurses that are taking legal action against their NHS trust. They've got a communal changing area, if you like, and their trust policy is that people can identify essentially how they want. So these nurses have found themselves in a situation where some fella who calls himself Rose can now use these changing rooms. This Rose person is apparently simultaneously trying to get their girlfriend pregnant. And I think there's a few biologically male things that one can do then, you know, that are any stronger than impregnating a female. But yet you can apparently do that and still declare yourself as a woman and access female changing rooms. I find it appalling. Aaron, your thoughts?
I would say that Keir Starmer's response to something in the last few days, which I wholly disagree with, is at odds with what Matthew's saying. So Keir Starmer has said that trans women with a gender recognition certificate, which has been in law since 2004, it's a legal certificate which allows a trans person, once they've transitioned, to change their birth certificate, I believe also their death certificate.
Which I don't agree with, by the way.
But that's been law for 20 years.
Yeah, but I don't agree with
that's
it.
That's fine. Just because you were saying this has happened under the Tories' watch. This has been law for a very long time. He is essentially saying that he disagrees with a piece of law that was introduced under the Tony Blair administration, and that, by law, says that a trans woman with a gender recognition certificate, GRC, should be recognised as a man in all legal circumstances. What Starmer has said is that even a trans person with one of those certificates, which are incredibly hard to get, by the way, you need a medical panel to sign off on.
He's going to make that all easier.
Yeah, he's going to make that a lot easier.
But we can talk about that. But right now, he's saying that somebody with that certificate can't go into a woman's toilet, which is a million miles away from what
hang on, first, let's just be clear about what they're going to do.
And where the Labour Party leadership has been on this.
Let's just be clear exactly about what they're going to do. So they're going to remove what is currently the requirement that you have to live in your new gender for 2 years before applying for the GRC. They're now going to change that and have a 2-year reflection period whereby it will be moved after the GRC, getting the certificate. And the second thing they're going to do is, instead of being signed off by a panel of medical experts and lawyers, there's now going to be one GP, one doctor, signing off your application for a GRC. So essentially what they're doing is they're making it easier for people, much like the SNP did in Scotland, by the way, when they said 16-year-olds should be able to change their gender with very little supervision, with very little guidance. Labour are making this process a lot easier. So they're mainstreaming the idea of gender ideology.
But it doesn't make any sense, because you're saying that, you're making that point. At the same time, Keir Starmer is saying that somebody with that certificate can't go in a woman's toilet.
I think with a massive...
That's what he said.
But
so it's completely incoherent, but I'm not suggesting...
I don't believe the Labour Party, though. I think with a massive majority, with the activist base bearing down on them, I think we're going to have wokery on steroids for the next 5 years, and I think this whole gender issue is going to explode to new heights. I think it's just going to be mainstreamed across the board.
But he's saying he disagrees with something which has been in law for 20 years.
Well, Starmer does, but we know lots of people on the front bench don't. don't disagree with it at all.
Keir Starmer has flip-flopped around on this issue like I don't know what. Yeah. He goes from 1 minute saying that you cannot say that only women have a cervix. He then goes on to say that there's whatever percentage of women actually have a penis.
99.9.
He then gets a nudge and a little whisper in his ear that because of the likes of people like J.K. Rowling and all the rest of it, that this is a big issue, a contentious issue for people. So then what they're asking for is that they want people to, politicians to be saying that single-sex spaces are based on biological sex. So whatever your harebrained notion of your own gender may or may not be, whether that's supported by a GRC or not, that shouldn't remove the fact that a single-sex space literally means a biological single-sex.
It is different, Michelle, though, because we've been talking about this for several years, about self-ID. Somebody with a gender recognition certificate is not about self-ID. They are legally recognised under law as a woman, and that's been the case for 20 years.
Yes, but this is what a lot of the campaigners will push back against, because you can still keep your penis. I'm sorry, everybody. You can still keep that and have a GRC. So a trans person, a biological male with a penis can have a GRC and come into a female changing room. And there's many, many women, including myself, that are not comfortable with that. And my heart, for example, goes out to the likes of those nurses who have to get changed before and after their shifts and have some fella with his tickle-tackle in the same changing room as them. I think it's appalling.
Let me put quickly, because I know somebody, a trans person, they've got a GRC, they've transitioned, they're 70 years old, anatomically they've changed, they have female hormones. What toilet should they use? Well, they're meant to go into a gents.
You're asking me a question about toilets, and my position is I do not believe you can change your sex. I don't share that notion. I don't buy into gender ideology.
This
I think
is not about self-ID. This is somebody who doesn't have a penis. They've got women's hormones in their body. They look to the whole of the world as a woman.
Probably turned their penis inside out and attached silicone bags to them. That to me doesn't make you a female. And I know it's
what toilet should they use?
Harsh.
I mean, that's the key question. This is a very small subset. We're not talking about self-ID. We're talking about a very small subset of the population that has that certificate.
Well, if they're not a biological female, then I really don't think they should be in the biological females toilets.
So what if
unless it's a unisex? Well, I'm not going to go around pulling the pants down, am I? Upon entry to a toilet, it's a principal point. If you have a penis and you are a biological man, you should not be in a biological woman's space. It's an incredible encroachment, infringement on our privacy, our rights. It's not for me. And you might think that I'm being cruel or unkind.
Right, I think the law where it was in 2004, it seems like a sensible place to be. There's a threshold you have to meet, in which case you get a certificate, in which case the law ceases to exist.
But as we said, that threshold is being weakened and will be weakened under a Labour government.
Yeah, look, you can have the final say on this, but let me ask you this. What are you doing tonight? No plans, I hear you say. Well, how about this? How would you like to come here and join us in the studio tonight? You can. What a treat for you all. You can go to GBNews.com and there you go, Patrick Christie's tonight. You can go and reserve your tickets and spend the evening with the big man himself. Don't be shy. He's a lovely guy and we're all very friendly here, so there you go. It's on your screen. The details are there and you will be very, very welcome, I'm sure. Look, after the break, I want to talk to you about Andy Burnham. He's been issuing a warning to us all. Let's listen in 2.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Thursday is going to be a windy day, particularly for northwestern areas, but it will be sunnier. There is a risk of some quite heavy showers, though, particularly where it turns quite windy overnight tonight across northwestern areas. You can see those tightly packed isobars. That indicates stronger winds. So we could see gale force winds across the far north and west of Scotland. Elsewhere, a breezy evening and morning on Thursday morning. But there will be clearer skies out there through the rest of tonight, so it will turn much drier and clearer. Temperatures will be allowed to fall away, though, so we'll be down into single figures for some areas, so slightly fresher start to the day, but there's going to be more sunshine around to start the day tomorrow morning for most areas. However, across western areas of Scotland, quite frequent showers will move in, as well as across the Northern Isles as well. These bring a risk of thunder as well and could last for quite a while. We'll also see some heavy showers across parts of Northern Ireland into some northwestern areas of of the UK, of England as well. But eastern areas and southern and central areas should stay dry through Thursday morning and, in fact, well into the afternoon as well. But the breeze will pick up as the day goes on, so it will be quite a windy day, particularly across north and western areas. Now, the best of the sunshine is likely to be across the south and east through Thursday, and here temperatures will climb a little higher than they have done today. So we could see temperatures climbing as high as around 21 degrees across the far south and east by Thursday afternoon. Elsewhere, further north and west, much fresher into the low teens, 12 degrees at best for some of us. Now, a bit of a switch around for Friday as the wet weather spreads into more southern areas. There's some uncertainty in exactly how far north this will push, but many southern and central areas of England and Wales are likely to see a much wetter day as we head into Friday, whereas it will turn a little bit drier to the north. Looking ahead to the weekend, a mix of sunshine and showers through much of the weekend and temperatures climbing a little bit higher by Monday.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner with the latest. Major problems northwest of Edinburgh. The A90 is blocked eastbound on the Queensferry Road off the Barnton Junction at the scene of a multi-vehicle collision. Moving into West Yorkshire now at Halifax, the A58, the Godley Road, is closed eastbound following an accident. On the M1 in South Yorkshire, a lane's blocked southbound at 34, the Meadowhall turnoff, where a lorry's broken down, queues back towards Rotherham. Really slow down the M6 through the West Midlands, Junction 10 towards Wolverhampton, coming from the M54 following an earlier breakdown. In South London, Gravel Hill is blocked at New Addington eastbound for accident investigation work, and Elizabeth Line trains are suspended heading out of London from Hayes and Harlington to Heathrow Terminal 4 and Terminal 5 with no Heathrow Express because of that fault on the tunnel north of Heathrow, and there are severe delays on the Piccadilly line from Acton Town to Heathrow. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel remain. I've got the Professor of Politics at the University of Kent, Matt Goodwin, and the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Now, a man that I quite like, actually, Andy Burnham, I don't mind him. He says, though, he's issued a warning in the paper today, and he's telling us, essentially, to go and look to the likes of France and see what's happening when it comes to Le Pen. And he's warning us all, essentially, to reject the hateful policies of the new British right. What do you think to this, Aaron? I'm calling you Aaron Bastani. Matt, what do you think, Matt?
Shock horror. Much better looking.
Switched your identity, self-ID, at large on Dewbs & Co.
What do I think about this? You know, OK, so I think terms like far right, hard right are being inflated by a lot of people to silence or stigmatise views that they find to be unacceptable. What's going on in France at the moment is a lot of people, including Michelle, a lot of young people, are voting for Le Pen's national rally because they don't want mass immigration, they don't want illegal migration, and they don't want what France had last year, which is 40 foiled Islamist plots. And these aren't small things, right? These were major plots. They don't want teachers being beheaded. They don't want Jewish kids being beaten and raped in Paris. They don't want old age pensioners being harassed by and beaten up on the streets by illegal migrants. I think the French have had enough. And I think France is at this point because, not because of Marine Le Pen, but because elites have failed to address the concerns that are driving voters to those parties over the last 20, 30 years.
I agree. Aaron Bastani, do you agree?
Well, it's an interesting piece because he says the country saw the end of the Conservative Party, the old Tory party as we know it. It died when Boris Johnson expelled people like Nicholas Soames and Rory Stewart. And there's a grain of truth to that. The process started then, and I suspect it's going to finish over the next several months, in so much as there is absolutely a battle for the Conservative Party. That's absolutely the case. It started around then, it's probably going to finish in the next, like I say, some point in 2024, one imagines. In terms of France, it's interesting because, you know, several years ago, Farage endorsed Le Pen. He said she'd be a good president. Now he's saying she'd be a disaster and that Rassemblement National would be very bad for the French economy. So it boils down to, who's the real Nigel Farage? Will he please stand up? Is it the Nigel Farage of 2017 or is it the Farage purportedly of today? And with Rassemblement National, they're interesting particularly for one reason, which is that Marine Le Pen obviously has the connection to her father, who started that party, or its precursor party, with a former member of the SS, the Waffen-SS. The far-right label for the party up until very recently was undeniable. What she can say is, look, the party has changed because we have people now like Bardella, who's her candidate to be the Prime Minister.
And obviously got rid of her dad and all stuff like that.
And I think Farage, politically, is trying to present Reform as a Bardella-style party, competent, professional, without the baggage of a Marine Le Pen-style party. So it's an interesting one for me, and I personally agree with Burnham's broader point, and I think that's also why, by the way, Farage has condemned Marine Le Pen. He's worried about that baggage, he's worried about that association, and his project, a bit like Giorgia Meloni in Italy, isn't necessarily to be a radical right-wing party. It's to recalibrate and redefine conservatism.
Well, so if I can just come in here, because Rory Stewart has made similar comments this week where he said, actually, the future for conservatism is to reject Farageism, populism, anti-immigration, and get back to what he calls the centre. Liberal centrists like Rory Stewart have an uncanny ability to define the centre as being where people like them are. In reality, the centre in most Western democracies is actually nowhere near Rory Stewart. In Britain, there's majority support for reducing migration in 80% of all seats. The public are fed up with illegal migration, and they're fed up with the forever wars, which liberal internationalists like Stewart and others supported and left a string of chaos and failures across the Middle East and elsewhere. And they're fed up with this sense of entitlement that comes with liberal centrists, this sense of, well, we know what we're doing and voters out there are stupid and they don't understand the real world. It's the politics of liberal centrism, the politics of establishment Tory liberalism that has been rejected through the Brexit referendum, through the 2019 election and now through the rise of Reform and Farage. And people like Rory Stewart need to wake up and smell the coffee.
I think they certainly do. What do you think to that? Speaking of Nigel Farage, we've got a big interview with him coming up at 7 o'clock tonight. He will be speaking to our political editor, Christopher Hope. And, of course, that is the latest, the final one, actually, of our series of interviews with the leaders. So that's live, 7 o'clock, here on GB News. After the break, we'll carry on this conversation about the right, the young, and how on earth this election is going to pan out. See you in 2.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Do you put jam or cream first on your scone? Divisive.
A new study has found that 44% of Brits put jam on before the cream. Which is the right way to eat a scone?
In my opinion, definitely jam first. But I have to say, do you know what? As long as you enjoy it and it's delicious, you've got nice scone, nice jam, amazing clotted cream, who cares?
Paul, why the jam first?
Because I love that chilled clotted cream that you hit first, then into that room temperature jam, and then that lovely baked scone.
And one of our viewers has written in and said actually she puts the jam on first because otherwise you would get it all over, as in it would wobble off on the top of the cream.
But I think it's easy to dribble the jam onto the cream. You're not spreading the jam onto the cream if you put it on top.
I would do jam first because it just seems to make less mess. So the jam spreads easy and just a dollop of cream on top.
Is there much of a market for the savoury ones that you have?
Yeah. But you know, like when you're frying onions for a hot dog, like fairground onions, fold that through your scone mix, bake your scone, so you've got this lovely kind of like roasted onion scone mix.
Into it.
Braised beef, clotted cream, horseradish and watercress.
Oh, my word.
Absolutely incredible.
Well, you're very adventurous, Paul, very adventurous.
Yes. But think of it, you know, like when you make beef stew and you put those scones, drop scones on top, like a beef cobbler.
Yeah.
It's that inspiration.
Well, I would call it like a dumpling.
Well, do you think very quickly, do you think these will become a classic?
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. Because I think there's just so much more to clotted cream, scones than just the traditional cream tea.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This election night, we're putting on a party.
And you are invited.
We'll be here with you.
Following all the twists and turns.
as well as all the live reaction from our election night watch party.
With our GB News lineup.
And as morning breaks, we'll be here with breakfast from 6 a.m.
As it becomes clear who the winners and the losers really are.
Vote 2024.
Thursday, the 4th of July.
Only on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co till 7 o'clock tonight. Matt Goodwin and Aaron Bastani remain alongside me. We've just been debating Biden and whether or not he will remain in office. Lots of you at home, I know, have very strong opinions on that. What were we saying before the break, gents? We're talking about Rory Stewart.
Yeah.
What was your point you were making there?
Well, I'm just saying there's lots of Tory Liberal elites who on Friday morning are going to be basically saying, I want the Conservative Party to change so that it reflects the world that I live in and my values rather than reflecting the world that most people out there want to live in. And Aaron, during the break, made a very good point, one I agree with, which is just look at what's happened to the 2019 Conservative electorate. 1 in 4 have gone to the Reform Party. Why have they gone? The surveys all show the same thing. They don't want the small votes. They want lower immigration. There is no debate about this. There is no discussion. The reason the Conservatives have imploded is because they've lost Conservative voters. Now, Rory Stewart and others can either get on the train and kind of get with reality, or they can keep saying, let's turn the Conservatives into the Lib Dems, and maybe we'll win a majority by targeting the big cities and the university towns and areas where people like us live, except guess what? Labour and the Lib Dems now dominate those areas. If you listen to Rory Stewart as a Conservative, he will lead you into the electoral abyss. He will lead you into a cul-de-sac. The future is exactly what the Tories did in 2019. Build a broader coalition with cultural Conservatives, with patriotic, hard-working people across northern England, small towns, coastal communities. And I'm afraid to say, Liberal Tory elites can't build that kind of coalition. That's what they've just shown us.
Do you agree, Aaron?
Well, I do, and the numbers speak for themselves. You know, the overwhelming majority of Reform voters are 2019 Tory voters. If they're coming from anywhere, of course, not voting as well as something, but very much 2019 Tory voters. This is great for Labour, by the way. This is absolutely fabulous for Labour. If you have people like Ken Clarke, Rory Stewart, Michael Heseltine saying that the Tories have to go to the centre, I can see the argument to a certain extent, in so much as Keir Starmer might get a majority of 200 and they say, well, look, he did it, why can't we? The point is Keir Starmer is bringing together a really big coalition. I know people might not like it, but it's true, which include, you know, solicitors with tennis club memberships in Dorset and former coal mining communities. It's a really big coalition. And he's doing that through gesturing towards some of the patriotic values Matthew talked about, but also he's pretending to be into public ownership of some things. Of course, in government, it's going to be really hard to keep that together. But right now, it's looking quite interesting. So what kind of coalition can the Tories put together? And I think you're right, trying to become a sort of Liberal Democrats plus it's not going to cut it. It's not going to work. So I think they have a lot of rethinking to do. And I think if that's the route they go down, it's going to take them 10 years before they get their act together. Maybe they don't, by the way. If Farage gets in and you have several Reform MPs, they will be hunting those Tories down if that's the politics they espouse, and saying by 2029, we're going to get all of you.
But, yeah, absolutely. Now, if the Tories do what I think the Tories will do, if they go back to the moderate Liberal centre with a Penny Mordaunt or somebody like that, there will never have been as big an opening in British politics for Nigel Farage. That's what he's praying for. Exactly. He wants the Tories to do the David Cameron 2.0. He wants the Tories to become basically indistinguishable from the Lib Dems and from the Labour Party. That's what he wants. The one issue I would push back on you, though, is Keir Starmer, is he putting that coalition together, or is this a punishment election? It's just all those people hate the Tories?
Well, you know what? I'm not on tomorrow because I will be getting ready for the party of the century. That's what I'm going to describe it as, our election watch party tomorrow night. So all will be revealed by the next time I see you. But look, Farmer Nick, you sound like a sensible chap. He says, a man can't be a woman. My bull wouldn't make a very good cow at all. So he says, what's this as well? Dickie says, Michelle, talk about France. Please, can you point out that the violence and the rioting that happened after the most recent election actually came from people to the left of politics. But yet, of course, it's always the so-called far right that get the blame. Look, as I said, I'm not going to see you until after the election now, so I would implore you all to go out and use your vote tomorrow. But for now, thank you very much. Night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Thursday is going to be a windy day, particularly for northwestern areas, but it will be sunnier. There is a risk of some quite heavy showers, though, particularly where it turns quite windy overnight tonight across northwestern areas. You can see those tightly packed isobars. That indicates stronger winds. So we could see gale force winds across the far north and west of Scotland. Elsewhere, a breezy evening and morning on Thursday morning. But there will be clearer skies out there through the rest of tonight, so it will turn much drier and clearer. Temperatures will be allowed to fall away, though, so we'll be down into single figures for some areas, so slightly fresher start to the day, but there's going to be more sunshine around to start the day tomorrow morning for most areas. However, across western areas of Scotland, quite frequent showers will move in, as well as across the Northern Isles as well. These bring a risk of thunder as well and could last for quite a while. We'll also see some heavy showers across parts of Northern Ireland into some northwestern areas of the UK, of England as well. But eastern areas and southern and central areas should stay dry through Thursday morning and, in fact, well into the afternoon as well. But the breeze will pick up as the day goes on, so it will be quite a windy day, particularly across north and western areas. Now, the best of the sunshine is likely to be across the south and east through Thursday, and here temperatures will climb a little higher than they have done today. So we could see temperatures climbing as high as around 21 degrees across the far south and east by Thursday afternoon. Elsewhere, further north and west, much fresher into the low teens, 12 degrees at best for some of us. Now, a bit of a switch around for Friday as the wet weather spreads into more southern areas. There's some uncertainty in exactly how far north this will push, but many southern and central areas of England and Wales are likely to see a much wetter day as we head into Friday, whereas it will turn a little bit drier to the north. Looking ahead to the weekend, a mix of sunshine and showers through much of the weekend and temperatures climbing a little bit higher by Monday.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Northwest of Edinburgh, in the outskirts, just off the Barnton Junction, the A90, the Queensferry Road, is closed eastbound following a multi-vehicle collision.